guys, it's me, J Motions. Miss me? Just on time for this trend.
It's my channel, not yours.
Dang it, not again.
Aberdeen's art and animation should say in the description where she belongs. Sorry about that, but I am back. And just on time for the trend. Damn, it's been a minute. Well, what better a time than after an extended multi-year long hiatus than to tackle one specific scene from an obscure tie-in manga to an already niche video game franchise, am I right, guys? So, Nendo V Movies did this thing. You know, a once or something or other scene playlist, bringing a massive amount of creators together, and shedding light on many beautiful moments in film and media all over. I've revisited so many shows and movies through these videos, highlighting so many beautifully evil scenes, and they've been inspiring for me. Definite lover of all things villainous and evil all over the media. So inspiring, as a matter of fact, made me want to tackle one of my own. But that's where the question arises. I have to make this video about something I hold dear, a villain whose presence left a personal impact. But at this point I'm so late to the game that almost every one of my favorites has been snatched up by people infinitely more talented and qualified than me. But that's where Metroid comes in. With the monumental announcement and legendary release of the once thought cancelled Metroid Dread later this year, my intense hyperfixation on the series has reached an all-time high, and I feel like I have enough passion for it to truly give it some justice. This franchise has not only defined my love for the Metroidvania genre, but it has single-handedly pulled me into its beautiful, macabre, and downright bizarre universe of bioweapons, shadow demons, and nightmare viruses. Every single corner of the Metroid world is brimming with this unique atmosphere, to the point that no matter how many creative hands mold and leave their mark on it, it just feels right. The precise attention to detail and grandeur of the Prime series blend in beautifully with the bare and dark vibes of the 2D entries. And somehow, even the strange tie-in spin-off media find its own unique place in this story. And that is where I'm taking you guys in this video. Metroid's prequel manga. Now, this manga was only released in Japan, in 2 volumes, but that's not how I found it. Currently, the only way to read the manga outside of its native language is on metroiddatabase.com, where it's been unofficially translated by dedicated fans for those who wish to read it. And this little prequel manga is something special. It's a wonderfully flashy story that fleshes out Samus's origins and her upbringing with the ancient Chozo and the Galactic Federation Police, while also introducing its own original characters that give her new depth within its beautifully illustrated pages. If you can't tell, I really like this manga. It cemented Samus as my personal favorite video game character, and brought the Metroid universe to life in a super fun and bombastic way. But its biggest contribution to Metroid as a whole, at least in my opinion, was the way that it truly and utterly defined our favorite murderous space dragon named after a weird director. The cunning god of death himself, Ridley. Now, don't get me wrong, this big nasty guy was still loved by the fanbase, even before this manga. He was big, scary, and relentlessly attacked Samus in almost every single Metroid game to date at this point. His introduction and boss fight in Super Metroid are some of the most iconic moments in the entire series and gaming in general. And every time he's appeared since, he's had a uniquely savage energy compared to the other bosses in the games. Always getting up close and personal with Samus, even picking her up and throwing her around in a way no other enemies dared to. It was always clear that Ridley was Samus's true arch-nemesis. But why was that? What distinguishes Ridley from his fellow pirate generals and bosses? For the most part, this was just summed up to be the status quo for him. He just fit the role of the big bad. In most of the game manuals before the manga, Ridley was always described as an insanely dangerous foe, even being nicknamed the cunning god of death. But for the most part, his role in Samus's life remained mostly unexplored. But in Metroid Fusion, at least in the Japanese release, we got a glimpse into the past, in the form of this image. Oh, so Ridley was responsible for the death of Samus's parents. That must be it! Well, at least part of it. Don't get me wrong, the art is gorgeous. Well, all the ending pictures are. But that is a tad bit underwhelming, isn't it? This vicious rivalry, every ferocious battle, was just because Ridley axed off her folks? Like, I get it, that sucks. I will never trivialize losing a parent, but in the scope of this narrative, it's a bit weak. Especially for the cunning god of death. Like, are we really gonna put Ridley on the same level as, like, Joe Chill? Or the ocean from Frozen? Luckily, no. because now we get the manga, a story-intensive and character-driven story centered around Samus and her origins. And front and center for a crazy amount of the book is our wretched space pterodactyl. And oh boy, is he wonderfully done within these pages. To start off, his introduction. Ridley's first scene is just him announcing the attack on Samus's home to steal a precious fuel. Framed in darkness and drawn so monstrous and evil looking, he immediately makes an impact. Perched in the vile blackness of his ship, it's clear that this is no goon. He's a threat, and a big one at that. But that's not all, because then we actually get to see Ridley during this attack, and he is ridiculously evil in the most fun way possible. He could have gone the generic route of ordering his troops around to retrieve the prize like a typical evil general, but no. Ridley is pumping him up like the leader of a killer frat house, having a hell of a time murdering all these innocent people in his wake. And that's all fun and good, but what about that moment? That pivotal scene where Ridley first meets Samus's folks, takes him out, and sets Samus on her Batman path. Well, see, that's actually one of the best scenes in the book, because Ridley never purposefully kills Samus's parents. It was all a happy accident. So what actually happened then? Well, Ridley was actually targeting the infant 3-year-old Samus, who was optimistically trying to befriend the murder dragon. And his response? Turn around and attempt to prematurely game end a literal child. Her mother just happened to jump in the way and get toasted by mistake. And her father passed away trying to stop the attack of the space pirates. Ridley isn't just bad. He is literally just the worst. See, unlike someone like Thanos, murder isn't a mission for him. It's literally a game, a hobby. He may be a pirate stealing goods and such, but he's in this career to sow death and reap misery. He's an adrenaline junkie that gets his kicks off of pure sadism. Koji Tozawa absolutely kills it with his depiction of the big bad boy. Now, I could babble on and on about how much I love the ins and outs of his depiction in the manga. Or I could just make this easier on everybody and actually get to the point. The one villainous scene. But come on, I'm not going to make it that easy for you guys. Some context for the scene, because there's quite a bit. And I really like talking about it. So, at this point in the manga, Samus is no longer living with Grey Voice and Old Bird, her surrogate Chozo parents, and is working for the Galactic Federation Police with her friends Mauk and Kreetz. Zebes, where the Chozo are living, is being assaulted by Ridley and the space pirates. Samus and company are leading a rescue mission for the Chozo, but a hologram of Old Bird, who is now missing in action, tells Samus that she's going to be a powerful protector of the universe, and that it's her destiny to be a hero, in place of the now failed Metroid. So as you could probably guess, Samus is already in a mix of emotions as it is, but it's only going to get worse. When Samus splits up with her friends to find and rescue Grey Voice and the other Chozo, she finds Grey Voice with the space pirates. Samus assumes that he's a hostage and tries to save him, but he assures her that he's in control. Now, Grey Voice at this point in the story was someone who was a stern but valued figure in Samus's life. Vision a better version of Adam Malkovich from Mother M. So as you can imagine, that makes his betrayal extra hurtful to Samus. But to add insult to injury, Mother Brain was also thought to be an ally. So here Samus stands, alone, with friends now turned enemies. For the next few pages, Mother Brain tries to enlist Samus to her cause, claiming all of the training and fighting she's done up to this point was just to make her into a weapon for the evil AI. And she reveals it was actually her who designed and created the iconic power suit that Samus is wearing at that very moment. Honestly, Mother Brain warrants an entire video of her own. Now, add this to Samus's already unstable emotional state. But she's still ready to keep fighting and defeat this new menace, firing at Mother Brain and attempting to find a weakness. She doesn't back down. At least, until we get a familiar face from her past. And this is when everything really begins. When I got to this point when rereading the manga, this is what inspired me to make this video. Once Ridley enters the scene, the entire atmosphere changes. Before this, the entire focus was the conflict between Samus and the ideals of two figures she'd known since her childhood. A thematic mental game of two grand villains trying to bring Samus to their side, with Samus giving strong resistance. There was an atmosphere of moral tension, but Ridley is an entirely different threat. He doesn't want Samus working alongside him. Ridley holds no morals. Ridley has barely said a word before immediately getting physical with Samus and wailing on her. He overpowers our hero as soon as they tangle. And in this manga, Samus has been regularly shown to have no equal in battle. And even when faced with severe emotional distress, she has been standing her ground. But here, she's thrown to the floor immediately. Ridley isn't here to monologue or lay out some grand plan. Within seconds, you know why he's here. As he pummels our hero non-stop, he starts to berate and insult her viciously.
What can you possibly hope to accomplish here on your own? So this is the bioweapon created by the Chozo? What a joke! This worthless piece of junk!
In direct contrast to Mother Brain and Grey Voice, who made a clear point to praise Samus for her strength and try to win her favor. Now, something that many villains share with their respective heroes is a mutual respect. This includes Mother Brain, and due to this respect, many of these big bads fall into a similar groove when battling their opponent. You've probably heard the
"We're not so different, you and I"
speech, where the villain attempts to coax weakness out of a hero by unearthing vulnerability. This is definitely an interesting angle when done well, but it often isn't. Then we have Ridley. He has absolutely zero respect for his enemies, and even his allies. Everyone around him is either a victim for him to torment and destroy, or a means for him to torment and destroy. A reminder that when Ridley first met the infant Samus, who was 3 years old by the way, he immediately attempted to annihilate her on the spot. So why would this armored soldier be any different for him? By the way, a light detail that makes this moment special. So Samus' suit is unique. It's a construct powered by her emotion, so part of its intense resilience is due to her powerful and stoic nature. But because Ridley is so powerfully connected to her trauma and makes such an intense effort to torment her, the power suit deactivates due to a panic attack induced by his presence. So Ridley sees her face, and he stops for a brief moment, after bashing her against a wall, of course. He makes a comment.
I've seen her before.
Grey Voice then clarifies to him that Samus is the sole survivor of his attack on K2L. Ridley thought he was just tossing around and insulting some random soldier he'd just met. That barrage of violence and insults wasn't personal to him and Samus whatsoever. It's just Ridley being himself. Brutal. So now that Ridley knows who he's dealing with, the ferocity doubles. He grabs Samus by the face, blaming her for his horrific fate after the attack where his ship crashed and burned on top of him, the doing of Samus' father. So now that Ridley has knowledge related to his current victim and knows how it affects her, he uses it as his deadly weapon. So he asks Samus,
Shall I tell you what I had to feed my injured body? Flesh! I somehow survived by consuming the bodies of mankind, tossed every which way. Foul, foul human flesh.
Samus' family and friends were nothing but survival snacks for him, and he didn't even like the taste. He throws Samus to the floor.
Humans are always reaped to the death of their own kind.
He's enjoying this a lot. So he decides to throw in his trap card with his most horrifying and iconic line of all.
You don't know. Maybe I even ate your mama so that my cells can live. Is she here or here? Always pay your respects.
Ridley is an absolute menace. He targets your weaknesses without mercy or respect. The other villains in the Nintendo scene have all sorts of motivation. Ganondorf has the ambition to rule the world. Bowser has the desire to gain romance and power. Even King Dedede has his own pride and greed. Most of, if not all of Nintendo, and even the villains elsewhere in the mediascape, have a grand motivation. Heck, even the Joker is trying to attain an end goal of some strange, chaotic society. But this is where Ridley absolutely shines as a character for me. Why this scene perfectly displays who he is. He gets a sick enjoyment from the suffering of others on a level not easily found elsewhere, let alone in a Nintendo property. There is no endgame for Ridley. The Space Pirate Commander has no cabin to sit by to watch the sun set on a grateful universe. Ridley is just living in the moment. Sure, he has the Space Pirates as a vehicle to steer his violence in the direction of new innocence to game end. But if Ridley is having fun, he's already winning. This scene also perfectly sets up every future encounter that these two will have for the rest of the series, and establishes the relationship that they'll have from here on out. The action-packed and wordless boss battles in every game set after this altercation have a new meaning and hold more power. You start to see hints of their vicious rivalry pop up as they fight, an inner rage the two show each other. It's great. It gives Ridley all of the character he needs for these fights, and makes him the perfect enemy for Samus. Interestingly enough, a scene similar to this was actually attempted later in the Metroid timeline, in a special game you may possibly have heard of. It doesn't really have a reputation of any kind. I'm joking, of course. If you're a fan of Metroid, you loathe the name. You all know it. Metroid Other M.
The baby.
If you liked something about Samus as a character, you won't find it here. But my focus is on the Ridley encounter of this game, where Ridley appears to Samus and provokes a panic attack out of her where she is helpless to fight him. It's a pretty big and flashy set piece for the game, but it completely fails to reach the peak that propelled Ridley's character to new heights in the manga. And to further show you how great the original scene is, I'll explain why Other M did the same scene, but failed in comparison. The biggest pitfall that we find ourselves in is that this encounter lacks any emotional context. Ridley's reveal here mostly relies on the player having a prior understanding of his relationship with Samus, and knowing that in Super Metroid, he permanently died, a fact offhandedly mentioned by Samus way earlier in the game. So to many who played this, Ridley shows up after being a Furby, and Samus absolutely freaks out for no reason. Ridley didn't really get any scenes before this where he affects Samus emotionally. She hardly even mentions him, so a lot of the feeling is lost. As a matter of fact, Samus spends more time talking about how evil and nasty little birdie is than she does about Ridley in any context. So even in the greater story, this scene lacks the true impact that its counterpart in the manga was able to achieve. In the manga, Samus is able to conquer the horrors she experienced in order to overpower Ridley, become stronger as a result. But in Other M, the scene is never truly built up and does nothing to affect the storyline of the game when it ends. Samus fights Ridley, he runs away, and then he dies so that he can set up Neo Ridley in Fusion. The encounter itself doesn't tell us anything about who Ridley is, or why Samus has such fear associated with him. What makes a scene like this work isn't that Ridley is big, nasty, and scary. It's that he's big, nasty, and scary to Samus. We don't get to see what differentiates this giant alien monster from the dozens of others that Samus has had to fight on her adventure so far, other than a name drop or two. Heck, he's not even the scariest looking purple monster in this game, which is why the scene ends up so frustrating. Ridley could have stood out so much from the multitude of goons attacking Samus on the bottle ship. Can you imagine how fantastically dour the game could have gotten if the players could see Ridley torment Samus with evil words and emotional manipulation? Well, you don't have to, because the manga did it better already. Also, my next point relates less to the actual writing of the scene, but is another huge reason Ridley had such a positive impact in the manga: his visual design. In the manga, the artist completely nails this on every front. The manga's visuals are just gorgeous in general, but Ridley really shines. He maintains his monstrous look from the games, mostly inspired by his Zero Mission design. The shading is always insanely stark all over his body, constantly draping him in shadow and giving him a dark aura. But his facial expressions might be my favorite. They are diverse, fun, and they are probably his best quality. One moment he's wearing a goofy grin and cracking jokes, and the next he's a toothy demon straight from the abyss of Samus's deepest nightmares. It's just divine. But then we have Other M's Ridley.
I'm a bird.
On its own, it's a perfectly solid creature design. There are even a few little things that stand out and I quite like. The tile-like vein patterns on his wings give off a nice alien feel, the structure of his head crest is quite nice, and I actually really like the new tail barb. And all of these features were actually carried over to his Smash Ultimate design and were implemented far better. But his strangely beefy build, honestly uninspired and expressionless face lend far more into an animalistic nature rather than a horrific and cruel personality he's meant to have. Also, the manga sets Samus's PTSD in a far more tasteful light and gives it more depth. Before the big scene, Samus already has to deal with several triggers throughout the plot, and reacts to them with different amounts of severity. And when Samus fully gives into the panic attack that Ridley puts her through, it's not just torture porn. She gets a scene where the Chozo all gather to comfort her and let her release her emotions in a beautifully done sequence. So that through this scene, Ridley has a massive effect on her character, and an insane amount of effort is put into the story to really emphasize just how psychologically cruel and demented he is. And this serves the purpose of making him a much more powerful force in Samus's character arc. He's not just vital, He is essential to Samus's story. In Other M, on the other hand, Ridley screams, Samus freaks out, regresses into a little girl, and just kind of weakly flails around before just kind of snapping out of it. Ridley's attack on Samus has a strong start, but fizzles out and fails to leave any sort of impact. He's no longer her arch nemesis. Samus just happens to have a phobia of purple pterodactyls. The mere fact that Ridley is Ridley isn't enough to carry this emotional weight. It's easy to toss a big iconic monster into a scene and bait nostalgia into fans of the series, but unlike PTSD, it leaves no lasting effect. For that, you need real character writing, a connection between the hero and the villain. The manga gave Samus a reason to fear Ridley, and even made it clear that his appearance had nothing to do with it. He's given this power and becomes absolutely integral to the story he's in. This sequence is my favorite bit of Ridley in the entire Metroid series, and unlike Metroid Other M, it only gets better each time I revisit it. I really hope that this video helps this manga get more attention than it currently has. It's relatively popular within the Metroid fanbase, and Ridley's brutal characterization has become a bit of a meme for fans, but it's still tragically underrated and underread. So if I can even get a small percentage of you to check it out, I've definitely done something right here. Metroid is a magical series. With all of these legendary titles spanning the years, there have just been so many big and terrifying baddies, with massive battles, terrifying chase sequences, and helpless moments of fear. Over 35 years of monsters, robots, and blue radioactive waste. And somehow, it was in a little tie-in manga, where this amazing series mainstay finally gets his time to be truly fleshed out in one villainous scene. What a wonderful franchise. Hey, what's up guys? Been a while. And a lot has happened since my last video. For one, I'm less of a loser now. And I'm living with my girlfriend, which has just absolutely been amazing. But funny thing, as soon as I moved in and finally got my feet settled, a certain virus hit and the whole year just went cuckoo for me. So I've mostly been spending my time with Abigail, just living life and getting through it. So yeah, that's where I've been. But I want to thank you all so much for watching the video and listening to my inane ramblings, and like, subscribe, bell button, smash, all those things.